We've got people thumbs upping it already. So it looks like we are 10 seconds into live, but there's a 20-second delay on Facebook. So there we are. So we're now live on Facebook. Sound sounds good. So it looks like we are 10 seconds into live, but there's a 20-second delay on Facebook. So there we are. So we're now live on Facebook. Okay. I think we're good to go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and begin. Welcome everybody to the show. My name is Perry Gruber. I'm the founder of Copiosis. Today, we're going to be talking the Copiosis political strategy with a member of my team. Yes, indeed, there is a team that works with me on Copiosis. And today, actually, in the next several sessions of these live streams, you're going to be meeting members of the team. The first one you're going to meet is today with Chris Hatton, our political strategist, our chief political strategist. And then perhaps the next time we have a show, we'll have my chief technical officer. And then after that, if we can wrangle him from Australia, we will have our, at this point, we don't have a title for him, so I'm going to call him our master advisor, Prasad D'Souza from Australia. And then after that, we'll feature some other people in the core team. And we'll speak individually with them before we open up our sessions to what they're normally going to be, which is to have just basically a hangout on YouTube and on Facebook where we're talking about issues pertinent to Copiosis. But today's show, we're going to be talking specifically about the political strategy, why we need a political strategy. And instead of me talking about that, we're going to have our chief political strategist, Chris Hatton, talk with us live from Skype. So let's introduce him now. Chris, I'd love to have you come on to the show and give a little introduction of yourself and talk a little bit about your background.
All right. Thank you, Perry. I just want to start off by saying thank you for this opportunity and the consideration and recognition of what I can bring to the table. And also, I think you're a good judge of character because of the quality team that you put together, the level of support that your innovation has created, and the passion that's driven within some of the social group members. So let me introduce myself. My name is Chris Hatton. I live in Lansing, Michigan, which is the the capital here, and I work in the Michigan House of Representatives for the Republican Party, and that's been quite an experience for me to be able to achieve this position in my practicing life, but also to be able to represent and fight for the constituents of my district, which is, if you look at a map of Michigan, it's in the Upper Peninsula all the way to the west, so north of Green Bay, Wisconsin area. And it's very rural, and there's rural poor and lots of fixed income and lots of, tradition. So that's kind of, me in a nutshell. My education is, I have an undergrad in economics from Michigan State, and then I went on to study public policy, Master of Public Policy from Michigan State. And then I went to Michigan Tech University, which is in the Western UP, and studied business administration there. So I got an MBA. So this has enabled me to kind of, not particularly think like a just a one from one point of view, like a political person or a business person or an innovator or an economist. So I kind of blend them all together and try to make it make sense. So I hope today I can help describe the political strategy that I've proposed, And then also, if we have time, we'll get into, the policy type strategy that would coincide with the actual political strategy. So I'll follow your lead here on where the discussion should go, Perry, and just thank you again.
Excellent. Yeah. So we're in a split screen now, so they can see both you and me. And so I wanted to start this conversation, and this is going to be more of a conversation than a Q&A, but I do have some questions to kind of prompt the discussion. And then somewhere along the lines, if we get questions coming in through the chat section, I will add them to the screen so people can see what people are asking, and maybe we can address those questions. Real quickly, before we begin with the discussion, I want to say anyone who is new to Copiosis can find out more at copiosis.com, our website. And then if you are interested in supporting the work, we encourage you to go to www.patreon.com/copiosis, where there are several tiers you can become a patron at, and we describe very specifically on our Patreon page where the money goes, how we use that money. So Chris, get started. Some people believe, so there's this ecosystem. There's an ecosystem that Copiosis belongs in, and it includes organizations like the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist Movement and the Moneyless Economy Movement and Colin Turner's organization, and just a whole bunch of people that are trying to create this new world. And some of those folks don't believe we need a political strategy. We don't need to engage in politics. We can just reach what many people claim to be a critical mass of people, and then things would just kind of tip in the direction that we want it to go. Others say that societal collapse is the way to make these kinds of things happen. Other people say we just need a demonstration city implemented somewhere that could show people the wisdom of the way. Very few people talking about going through politics. Why do you think we need a political strategy to make something like this happen?
I think being able to utilize the legislative process as it exists currently can be of benefit to what we're trying to bring into the world here, because by just stating that you're wanting to build something that is a complete paradigm shift and thought process shift away from the system we live in now, without explaining anything except for, we have to get rid of government, we have to get rid of money, we have to get rid of corruption, and we have to get rid of social unrest. And it's a dangerous line to toe, because without a bridge to get to that point to where we have abundance and resource-based economy and a utopia type setting, without that bridge, you are unable to get enough momentum behind you to be able to push through that barrier with enough backing that would be able to counteract some of the power pillars that we run into today. So my thought process there is that by utilizing the power pillars themselves to advance the agenda, that is the kind of, in a nutshell, the premise of what we're talking about here. So, do you have any specific questions you want to know there?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for that answer. What do you consider? What are the power pillars that you're referring to, and how do those function, and why do we need to be concerned about those things?
So, at a very basic level, I consider the power pillars to be one is government, another is business, another is religion, another is nonprofit, and then you can make arguments for others, but those are the main power pillars that participate and collaborate in designing the paradigm from which society operates. So I would say that's the key. If we can get Copiosis type mindset into the people who are engaged and hold influence over these power pillars, then society will start to be designed in that way. So the paradigm from which society lives will start to be designed that way. So I say, unless, like in my opinion, anarchy is not the way. We've seen in America these past couple of months, we've seen a little bit of that, and it's kind of implying that there's lawlessness, and it's almost a leaderless movement where there's no direction and no incentive. So there's that troubles me a little bit when I go on a thought experiment there.
Why does that trouble you? What is a thought experiment that you go through in your mind?
So when I think of a leaderless type anarchy society, it kind of takes me back to a more like primal type human existence, to where we're not using our cerebral cortex, we're just using the basic instincts, and that we've evolved past that. And I hope that we can, in a civilized way, present this argument that through using the system that exists now, that a more solid implementation would result from.
So are you... Oh, looks like we lost Chris. We'll have to call him back. Just bear with us a second. Oh, there you are. There you are.
I'm sorry, I'm on my phone, so I just got a call, so I'll try not to.
No sweat. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So once you we're having comments coming in, and we'll be addressing them in just a moment. Are you saying that things like protests and the violence we're seeing and the calls from the streets, are you saying that is not an effective way to make things happen? And the reason why I ask that is because many people, I think, would point to exactly those things that have produced results, such as the Equal Rights Amendment bill and women's suffrage and all the other boycotts that have produced results throughout history. Or are you saying that those kinds of tactics are not effective?
No, I consider that to be activism and advocacy, where the anarchy piece is this kind of implied destruction and no regard for law, and I know that that's part of the argument that's urgent right now in America, for sure, is lawlessness, and who's which side of the law is following the law. And so no, I'm not saying that at all, because it's our humans are inherently political, and humans are inherently I'm trying to get at focused on the differences between each other. And I think that that some of the activism and advocacy solidifies differences between people, but I'm hoping that some of this advocacy and activism that exists will help solidify a commonality. So people, we can, through commonality, we can start to visualize a world that exists based on us being conscious, and then we build it from there. So not the differences, but the get it down to a very, very basic level. What do we have in common, and then build from there. But, it's not easy.
It's not easy, right? And this is
time.
It's interesting the time that we find ourselves in, where it seems like this is both a ripe opportunity to do something like Copiosis. It also seems like one of the most difficult times, because you're talking about finding commonality, and it's at least in our work so far, reaching out to conservative folks. So just a little background for the audience. We've pretty much exclusively communicated about Copiosis to the progressives, because we inherently believed that they would see it as most valuable and most worthy of pursuing and supporting. We've purposefully avoided talking to conservatives because we felt that our messaging would not reach them. So lately what we've done is we have attempted to create messaging specifically to conservative populations, conservative audiences. And one of the ways that we are doing that is by engaging with conservatives in kind of like informal focus groups. And the results of those focus groups so far have been, to be honest, disappointing. Not from the perspective of what they've told us. We've learned a hell of a lot, but with respect to how we have thought that we could effectively communicate Copiosis, our assumptions were wildly off. Some of our assumptions. Some people on the core team were spot on with regard to how conservatives were going to react. Chris was one of those people. And so we're finding it very difficult at this point to come up with messaging that can reach both conservatives and progressives. And so, Chris, what do you think about that? Is it possible to have messaging that can reach both sides at the same time, or do we need separate messaging? And why is it important in the first place to reach conservatives at all if we can get a lot of progressives on our side?
All right, yeah, you're putting me on the spot there. So, yeah, I'll try to paint some scenarios and see how that resonates with the viewers and you guys. So, one of the very innovative aspects of Copiosis that stands out to me is what Perry has coined as the necessities, which are food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, and education, are provided to anybody that participates in Copiosis at no cost to anybody. So, this is a hard concept for conservatives to follow, because usually it's conservative mindset would go straight to, okay, so healthcare is provided to people that can't afford healthcare through either Medicaid or other types of government programs for targeted audiences, and then Medicare for some of the long-term taking care of people who are aging, which is again a very expensive piece of the healthcare sector. But if we're there is a benefit to this, in my opinion, is that if you're able to convey the message that this is being provided separate from government, that's a huge benefit to someone like me, because it's like, okay, so I'm, my money's not going towards that, because I've never wanted it to do that, and my money, as in the taxes that are taken away from my earnings.
Right.
Has some sun coming in here.
I see that. Yeah.
So, they conveying this message that that these things are happening. This is society providing to society. This is not government or charity. So that's a big talking point to someone like me. Another example would be the notion of okay, if the money's not being spent on things like healthcare, education, and housing anymore, do we eliminate that money from the federal budget or the state budget or the local budget? Or do we reallocate it into something else? Do we lower taxes because of that? So there's lots of kinds of ways to bounce it around, that can make a lot of sense to someone with a conservative mindset.
Got it.
So it's with these types of conversations that we can, further our understanding, because it's not always straightforward, and trying to predict what the other side's going to do through the other side's lens is, stereotypical, and it's not always like that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, so then with regard to conservatives at all, why does an organization that's trying to do what we're doing need to reach out to conservatives in the first place?
Because to fully realize the goal of Copiosis, the people who who would have a problem with it would be forced to participate, because you're saying this is going to be for everybody, and if there's a force going on there, then it's not by their own choosing. And I know that's kind of, you can parlay that or parallel that to a lot of things happening today, but I don't believe that's what Copiosis is about. I think it's about offering the same thing to everybody.
I think we're also acknowledging at Copiosis that in order to have Copiosis be adopted in a nation that's democratic, you have to get everybody as much as you can on board, because if you don't, or even worse, if you alienate some segment of the population, they can use the political framework to slow down or even defeat what it is you're trying to do, right?
That's right. And this is where we get into power and influence. And I know that part of Copiosis' core competency is to separate or decouple power from government and from wealth. And that's a socio-economical evolution. Mm-hmm. And that can only be achieved through an outside. I mean, the disruption's coming from the outside, but the pressure is going to be coming from the inside. And I mean that by when we get into this policy initiative that I'm bringing up, that certain pieces of legislation that can get passed into law will help usher in the Copiosis environment quicker. So that's why I'm saying that there's this bridge that needs to be constructed to get from here to there. And the bridge is not only how this is going to happen, but each of the individual pieces has its own purpose. And by looking at one of the individual pieces alone, you're not going to know it's Copiosis. You're going to know it's Copiosis when the whole bridge is complete, and then you offer that as a final, nail in the coffin, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So you're starting to talk a little bit about more of the details of the political strategy itself with each of these pieces of legislation. Can we talk a little bit about how we go about affecting or influencing the political machine and the power pillars that you talked about before, and how are we going to engage with the political system so that we actually see some progress happen?
So it starts with getting the right people. So when we're talking about politics, we as Copiosis don't engage. I mean, in individuals' politics. That's for politicians. So we are gonna groom or cultivate politicians to be able to, before they start campaigning, know what the Copiosis mindset is, and then get involved in the political and legislative processes to be able to advance the Copiosis agenda. That's a nutshell piece. But going into some specifics, it's going to involve a recruiting process from which the Copiosis core team will be able to establish a process by which we can qualify quality people that we know will be resistant to influence in government because the core values align with certain core values in Copiosis. And my argument from the beginning is there's core values in Copiosis that align with conservative core values, which is small government, lower taxes, not having the government have to provide for people from my tax money, no charity cases, this kind of thing. And it's and I'm just being blunt, and I know that might be abrasive to some people, so yeah, the people have to be resistant, because once you're in there, once you're actually in, and I can speak from this to this from experiences, you get influenced. There's a revolving door of lobbyists. There's lobby interests that the leadership in either the legislature or the executive branch are influenced by, so leadership can influence you. There's the way I believe it should happen is the constituents should be the influencers. But I'd say that there's a lot of times where your hands are tied because you're being influenced either by corporate lobbyists, the leadership, or an interest group. So it's a tough road to hoe there. But going back into the political strategy, we have the recruiting, the qualifying. The next piece is the education. So that's getting them to know what it is we're doing, if they don't already know already. Instill those kind of transformational processes. Let them know how that the legislative process itself can help advance this agenda. Teach them about what it means, what the at no cost means. So there's an abundance type education that needs to happen. What does abundance mean? What does abundance economics look like? I think these are important pieces, because all of our mindsets we were all born in a scarcity type mindset. So it's like, if we try to think about abundance through our own scarcity lens, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So you really have to strip away everything you think and then start at the very basic level, which is abundance means, it's not just there's enough for everybody. True economic abundance means anybody can take as much as they want without affecting the ability of anybody else to take as much as they want.
Well said. That's exactly right. Yeah.
All right.
So some people would say, so we have a question that's specifically related to what we're talking about, and I'm going to ask it in a second. So Daintier, if you can just hang on just a moment. I just want to ask a question of you, Chris, that I think the audience might be asking themselves, which is, it's a two-parter. One, how long is a political strategy going to take to make this happen? And two, how much is it going to cost? Like, is it really expensive to place politicians in positions in the government?
So that you can pull up campaign finance records. A lot of them are published. The hard money is published. Soft money is something different altogether. And then we have super PACs with Citizens United. So yes, there is a lot of money going around that's actually published. There's a lot of money going around that's not published. And so and that's the main influencer at this point. It's definitely money and or, coercion. So the money aspect is real, and it is needed. Not, and I'll give you a personal experience. Not everywhere, because in my own campaigning experience, we were, out. Our opponent outraced us over 20-1, so he spent over 200,000, and we had a little less than 10,000, and we ended up winning by 500 votes because of the ground game that we put in. So, but that was Western UP rural, and that's not an everywhere story. So some of the races here in Michigan, over $4 million were spent for state representatives, and that's not even federal. So it's like, yes. And I'm guessing a place like Portland, it would be quite a bit of money that would be required to put up a good fight.
And how long would it take?
To get people in?
Yeah. How long would it take if we did the political process? Well, how long would it take to get people in? But also, how long would it take, given the political process, for Copiosis to actually happen?
So, that's a pretty loaded question. But if we put like the resources into it, and the last piece of my strategy here is the sustaining piece. So by results, we're able to have recruits come in without us having to recruit them. The timeline is expedited then. So if we're planning on going for state governments first, which is one tactic that might happen, we can start that in 2022. So there are already states right now that have started to enact some types of legislation that would definitely benefit Copiosis. And I'm talking about, like blockchain technology and the use of smart contracts. That's huge, because that enables a digital contract that's, recorded, and bilateral, the ability for digital value to be transferred. So it's, that those types of things are the individual pieces that would help, usher in this new age. But the initial push is going to need to have a strategy to where we either go after multiple states, or we go after multiple seats within a few states. So I would assume that it's possible to do multiple seats in many states. And I'll say this because there are certain districts which are predictable. And in this sense, definitely there is some, we're always going to vote for this guy, and especially if there's no term limits, then sometimes it breeds corruption, sometimes it breeds success. But those would be places we would avoid. Other places that are maybe rural poor but have a public university in the district, that would be an excellent place to target. There's many districts like that across America, because then you can target specific voting population within the district, and then just by looking at some of the previous legislative initiatives emanating from that district, you'll be able to build out a quality campaign talking point type run, because it's like the idea here is not, oh, we're running on this Copiosis platform. The idea is to connect to your group of people by connecting core values and running a normal campaign. You know, you on the side, you can definitely one-on-one with people all day long, but you know, and then on the campaign stage, you got to be ready to debate. So that's going to be part of this education process. Is the ability to debate is definitely one of the most important pieces of this whole aspect, because, you know, right now, well, I guess politics have always been like very polarized, but it just seems like with social media and with other things that, you know, one mistake can make or break an entire reputation.
Yeah, we've seen that.
When I went on there, did I answer the question?
Yeah, you answered it fine. So just to let the viewers know before we get to this question, we do have this political strategy is focusing primarily on the United States because this is what we know best, but also because there's a lot of money here, and we are working to reach that money because we need the money in order to run our organization. And again, if you go to the Patreon site, you will see that what we spend each year in order to make Copiosis happen as Copiosis is right now. It's not a whole lot of money, but it will be more and more money as we move forward and become more and more successful. But we also have other political strategies going on in other parts of the country, or not parts of the country, parts of the world. And we can't talk about those at this moment because they're still in the very early stages. And so we just kind of keep those to ourselves right now. But the biggest political strategy that we're moving forward with right now is in the United States. So that's why we're focusing so much in this conversation on that aspect of our strategy. Okay, let's take a question now. The first question came in from, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name and I apologize in advance. It looks like Daintier Drigon or something like that. His question is, once you get into the government, how would you handle threats from big money corporations which tell you to dismantle this system or your family might get hurt? Could something like that happen? It's a good question. And Chris, I'm going to let you answer that one. Could something like that happen?
So generally, yes, there are coercive tactics, meaning, you know, threats. This is definitely not uncommon. Most of it goes under the radar. And there is an ability to be able to mitigate against the effects of coercion and corruption. And that is the knowledge coming in that, you know, you were elected for one purpose, and that's not to serve what the leadership wants, and that's not to serve what corporate interests want. So if you refuse to make appointments with the lobbyists and the and then when the leadership comes down and says, hey, you know, you should meet with this lobbyist because I want you to, you should openly, you know, refuse that. So it's not about it not going to happen. It's about how you handle it when it does happen. So if you're worried about you know, always having a target on your back, that's part of the process of being a politician
Right.
who doesn't listen to power and influence. Yeah. And that's becoming a larger and larger segment of elected officials out there at this point. So yes, it's definitely possible, but I believe that during the grooming process we can teach people to expect certain things and, you know, make sure to have adequate surveillance on their own properties and be able to, you know, against anything that happens outside of work too. So you know, there's no simple answer to that. But yeah, when we're going up against power and influence, those are one of the tactics that they use.
Yeah, there's a show on Amazon right now called I think it's called Upload, and the main character, he dies and goes to this place where they upload. Have you seen this show?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you saw the David Koch character who laughs and says, "Oh, you got murdered," and the main character doesn't recognize that he was going up against extremely valuable markets, and David Koch was saying, "No, you got killed because you were doing that." So this question is really legitimate, and I'm glad you had an answer for that one. So the next question is from Howard Silverman, and he is asking, what specific policies would you enable Copiosis adopt? What specific policies would you enable to get Copiosis adoption? Federal, state, and municipal levels? You want to take that one, Chris?
Yeah. So definitely, my thought process here is we're going to see some pretty quick transformations in federal government, and I think that this COVID-19 crisis is going to accelerate the movement towards things like virtual voting for representatives, so that they don't have to be in Washington to be able to vote. And then as soon as you start to think about something like that, it's like, all right, hold on. And the people are going to be like, if they don't have to be in Washington to vote, why should I have to go to the polls to vote? So I think there's going to be this quick transformation that's going to make the federal government a little bit more leaner and more representative than what it is now. One of our good team leaders, Simone, posted a quality article about the intent that George Washington wanted to have in regards to the legislative process. And his input was there should be one representative per every 30,000 people. So that's way different than, we have 435 districts and there's one representative for each district, no matter how big the population is. So much different. Yeah. So if we're starting to say, okay, well then let's start to argue for that type of process, then we start to see kind of these strongholds of our national constitution start to be like just a force to change. So state governments for sure would be more of a target point for me, in my mind, I should say, in my opinion, because we've seen a little bit with COVID about the executive branch being able to control what goes on within a state based, mostly void of what the legislature's input is. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a check and balance issue there, but it definitely showed our federalism in effect. And I think that the types of policies, I know that was part of the question. So the types of policies would definitely be.
Looks like he got another call. There he is. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
So I mentioned before the ability to make blockchain a viable record-keeping mechanism and enable the use of smart contracts. That's a big piece of what it is we're trying to do here with the
algorithm,
net benefit revenue.
The algorithm.
The algorithm uses. Another one would be, like I mentioned a little bit ago, the ability to vote digitally.
Yeah.
That would, kind of get a better sense as to what America's actually thinking, because I know the way it is now with gerrymandering and going to the polls to vote or absentee voting is largely like that because, in my opinion, we're vastly outnumbered.
We being who? We being who?
Conservatives
Yes.
vastly outnumbered by people who are not conservative.
That's right.
I think the maintenance of the two-party system is solidified by going to the polls to vote and gerrymandering. So, and it's that's what I'm saying is that federally, I think the two-party system is near its peak, but then back to state. So another piece of legislation possibly would be, digitally vote representation. Sorry, my mind just went blank there.
That's okay.
Do you have any suggestions that you've been thinking of on that?
Well, so one of the things that we've been talking about with regard to blockchain could be the passing of legislation that allows for sovereign, I think it's SSID, sovereign secure identification.
That's a great point, Perry, because that would be that you wouldn't need to carry papers with you anymore.
That's right.
You could go and if that becomes international, then you can go international without having papers on you.
Yeah.
So that's a very important piece. So the ability to have a digital ID without having an implant is very, very important.
That's right.
I just kind of put that piece in there.
I know it
associates digital ID with an implant, and I'm like, what? I mean, I get it, but it's like, all right. So there's lots of mechanisms that are in play right now, and I'm building out a list of things I've been watching, in my job, and trying to educate people on them in legislature and by bringing in expert testimony to committee hearings. So that is one thing I do, and then at the local level. There's lots that can happen at the local level because I believe eventually power is going to come back to the local level because they're closest to what's going on, and they'll be able to, So I don't mean power to the government. I mean power to the people in the district, and I mean that through a mechanism which I've brought up a few times recently here, but it's called participatory budgeting. And this, in effect, is saying, okay, you're going to take my tax money. I want it to go there, and then it goes there. So it is consensus driven, yes, but there's more and more people coming to these types of meetings, and New York City is about half of their districts now are incorporating participatory budgeting, and it's hard to run against because usually it's all like, oh, okay, I'm going to get elected and I'm gonna accumulate power and I'm going to use it how I want. But once this participatory budgeting was enacted, and this is just 2-3 years ago, and it's spread to the half of the city already at the alderman level, and it's so essentially you're giving power to the people to decide where the money's spent.
Well, it's interesting that with that proposal, given what's happening right now with the Defund the Police movement, if the community bands together on this new budgeting tool and directs and everyone or a large majority of the community that the police is serving says, we don't want our taxes to go funding the police, it's much easier to defund the police that way than to try and get a government agency that's controlling the budget to do it. Would you say that's accurate?
I mean, if that's the intent.
Yeah.
And I know that urgent, events will cause intent like that. Yes. So that's entirely possible.
So that,
go
I was just going to say that could set a precedent. So this discretionary budgeting could also set the precedent for other types of decision making of the citizens that could lead to the citizens determining something like copiosis happening. So right, is that a good?
Yeah, and I was just going to add, in New York City, they are largely defunding parts of the police right now. So that is happening through participatory budget right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
So what I was just saying is that if it seems like a logical step in the future that if you have participatory budgeting, you could then have participatory governing or governance, where right, and then from there you could have the decision making through that participatory governance through the people asking for something like copiosis to happen. So I can see a natural conclusion of what's already happening leading to something like copiosis.
And it's like people don't keep up with these types of innovations and advancements. So they're wherever they're locked, even if you explain it to them, they might still be locked there. Like that's fine, but this is the way things are. So for a lot of us, it's already too late. That's not what I'd argue, but it's like, all right.
When you say a lot of us, just to be clear again, when you say a lot of us, you mean a lot of us conservatives?
No, people that are resistant to change.
Got it.
So that's all over the spectrum.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, yeah. Another question.
Yeah, let's take another question. So the next question is, let's get rid of Howard's. Howard, thanks for that question. That was awesome. The next question is from Severi. He says, I'm not from the U.S., so I don't understand the dual-party system inner workings, but coming from strong multi-party system countries, do you think there would be a different strategy to follow? Do you want to take that one, Chris, or would you like me to start?
Sure. I mean, I'll give a quick one
go
there.
For it.
You can follow up. I think that I briefly touched on it before. I think the longevity of the two-party system is in serious question right now, and that's being brought on by these digital forces, which are, in my opinion, going to inherently decentralize, some of the accumulated power in Washington. And, if some of these like digital voting things happen, then, it's like, all right, who is this person and what party is this? And then you're like, I know him. He's my next door neighbor. I'm going to go talk to him. And then, so I think if we get representation down to down like to 30 to 60,000 people per representative, we're talking about thousands of representatives.
Yeah.
And that fact, no, you're not going to have Republicans and Democrats. You're going to have across the board. But please go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that the possibility of this happening in a multi-party system country is possible. You have a greater dilution of the electorate, of course. But what to be honest, what we're looking at is potentially having, and we can't control any of this, right? We're all speculating about what the future is going to hold. But we're looking at potentially a monarchy having make this happen in their country, as opposed to working in a democracy, because in a monarchy you have only one party, and that's the ruling party. And so it's possible that we could see copiosis first implemented in a country that has a king. We just don't know. So all the options are on the table. The same goes with the projects we're running. All of our options are on the table, and we talk about all these projects that we're contemplating, with the healthcare vertical initiative being the first one. There are some others on the table that we haven't talked about, all of which are being quantified and clarified by technology as we improve our look at what it is we're wanting to do or trying to do with our algorithm and our software, and whether it's going to be an app and things like that. So everything in Copiosis is really fluid, but that makes it really exciting, including our political strategy. And I'm glad that Chris is on board here to answer some questions. So let's take another question. It looks like Hauser66 has a question. He says, or they say, shouldn't the political strategy focus one message with political leaders or go third party? the key word should be wages. Example, pandemic pay for nurses, the vertical that Copiosis is working on. So he's asking, shouldn't our political strategy focus on one message with political leaders or go to a third party? Chris, you want to
go? So I'd say that, I understand the tactic there. I think that that could be part of the strategy, but we should not have the strategy be a one go, everything in one basket. That I disagree with. So yeah, a tactic in the strategy for sure, because it's proof of concept is going to cause a proliferation.
Yeah.
So if we're just focusing on one thing, then it's like we're not going to be able to duplicate that. So I'm saying we should have a process by which we put awareness on these multiple initiatives that we're working on.
Can you say
yes.
Can you say a little bit more about what you mean by proof of concept equal? What did you say? Proof of concept
is going to cause a proliferation in the amount of verticals that we're working in.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, it's going to be pretty substantial, and it's and I think that it's gonna I think it's I'm trying not to say too much about it, but
it's hard not to. I know. Essentially, right. You're saying once we demonstrate that we're able to do what we're intending to do in one vertical, the success is going to breed desire for it to happen in other verticals.
Right. So I'm saying by the time we have our first first politicians campaigning, we're going to have more than that under our belt.
Yeah, I see that too.
That would be one piece of it. We would do that, yes, but then in addition to everything else.
Gotcha. And it's interesting because, there we go. I can move you over a little bit. It's interesting because Andrew Yang's efforts right now to place politicians in specific locations is turning out to be somewhat successful, where he's raising money to place people who are aligned with the UBI message into political positions. I think they've had 1 or 2 wins here in the United States. And so it's interesting that there are other people that are looking at the same strategy. So we're not the only one that's thinking about using politics. Go ahead.
Right. But the caveat there is we're not running on a platform. We're saying I'm a Republican and you need to elect me. I'm a Democrat and you need to elect me. So no, the initiatives should be what the political strategy is. Once elected, we try to get laws passed that would benefit these initiatives. So not we're running on these initiatives. That's where I think there's a disconnect in what I'm trying to convey and what other people are receiving.
Gotcha. So, for example, our legislators might lobby for passing this sovereign ID idea as a way of adding another chink in the system that is Copiosis, but they don't talk about Copiosis.
Right, but then once this digital ID is passed, that expands the scope of everything we're doing by orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
So there's a path that is not going to be broadcasted.
Right.
The broadcasted part is purely political campaign that's running on connecting values, and that's what they usually are. Or, like lots of people do have a platform, but I tend to think that those are fads, and the ones that use traditional talking points that connect policies to values are the ones that get through.
Yeah. So this is, and we have, to my knowledge, I don't know that an entity like ours, an entity in this ecosystem, has tried to do something like this, and that's why we're finding it to be challenging, but we're definitely committed at Copiosis to making it happen. So, Chris, I want to thank you for being on the broadcast today. We're going to end up right at an hour, which is great. So we don't have to keep a lot of people's time. I think we answered every question. Yep, we got every question answered. I want to thank everyone for participating or for being in the audience and asking questions and listening to what we're saying. It's been a great first show. In the next show, we're going to have our Chief Technology Officer, Jarrett, come in, and he and I are going to talk at length about the technology behind Copiosis and how we're working to develop the app and where it's going to overlay with the healthcare initiative and the other initiatives we got going. It's going to be a big speculative conversation. So I appreciate all of you coming on to the show today. We have not scheduled the second one yet, but we will make the announcement in the Copiosis social group when we do. If you're not a part of the Copiosis social group, feel free to go there at Copiosis or at facebook.com/groups/Copiosis. And also consider liking our page on Facebook. It's Facebook.com/Copiosis. And if you have been around for a while and you really like what we're doing, please consider becoming a Patreon, going to patreon.com/Copiosis and making a pledge. All levels are appreciated, and you can see there full transparency where the money's going and how we're spending it. And again, thank you very much for being with us today, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Good job.